for having me here, Mrs. Malu Lopez and all the cabinet wives, hindi ko na po iisa-isahin, and our esteemed guests and delegates from ASEAN. We all know that ASEAN is one of the most diverse regions in the world. It is a region of 32,000 islands spanning over 4 million square kilometers, hosting more than 600 million people who speak more than 900 different languages and dialects. Oh, that's not, okay, that's 900 dialects, not 900 million. Okay, just a correction. Aside from its abundance of natural resources, the ASEAN region is also gifted with rich cultural heritage. Among the facets of heritage, I've developed a particular interest on textiles and on weaving traditions, the ties that bind, as I call it. Traditional textiles tell a lot of stories and histories. In every hand-woven textile, as I told you now when I arrived with this 100-year-old cotton hand-woven textile from Bugasong in Antique, and many others like you're wearing. It shows a weaver's passion for her craft and respect for heritage. Although textile is tangible, weaving is an intangible heritage that would cease to exist if not preserved and promoted. Behind every textile is a great synergy of a weaver's mind, heart, and soul unleashed through the loom. This rhythm of energies gives life to the strands of thread, and behind every cloth spun from threads of various origins and colors is a story of a weaver's relationship with her loom. It is her craft, it is her passion, it is her life. That's a Yakan weaver in the National Museum. ASEAN member countries have their respective weaving traditions. Each country has a vast array of vibrant traditional textiles, and beyond the intricate weaving technique and fine embellishments we find in these garments, we discover cultural expressions and visions of our history that have endured the test of time. Many years ago, I visited various textile museums, and that was way in 2011, the museum in Vietnam, I think that was in Hanoi, the Museum of Ethnology in Hanoi. Do we have our representative or delegate from Vietnam here today? Maybe not, yeah. And it was actually in 2007 or 2008 in Luang Prabang when I first went, and then spent the New Year again this year or last year, where I was inspired to actually set up the first permanent textile gallery in the National Museum, because I saw the community museum in Luang Prabang. Oh, I'm wearing the same blouse. Okay, the Tiboli. That was many years ago in the National Museum. But the community museum I saw in Luang Prabang, is there anyone from Laos here? No. Okay, it would have been great if we had all our ASEAN delegates here, but I know there are many other schedules. And I saw that a small community museum can actually exist with a collection, a small collection, as long as it's curated well. Then I talked to Dr. Ana Labrador and Jeremy Barnes of the National Museum, and I said, why don't we have a textile gallery? And they said, because no one from government ever supported it. I said, that's not true. I'm supporting it. I will fund it. I was not even chairman of the Committee on Finance yet, but it was a small room in the old Senate building, which is now the National Museum for Fine Arts. And at the time, it was a small room, but it was curated very well by Dr. Ana Labrador. And we launched it in 2011 and 2012, and it became a destination of many of our students, of our government workers, of tourists, of people. In fact, it was Queen Sofia of Spain who went there when we were just a small room, not even in the National Museum now of Anthropology. And she said, this is the best of the best of the best. That was Queen Sofia. They should have had the photo there a couple of years ago during her official visit. So we can see that we need government support to build our textile galleries. At the time, we had many collections of textiles, antique, old, and new ones, which will just in archive in the National Museum. And I felt it was such a pity that we were not showing it. To make a long story short of many years, from that small room, we now almost have 1/3 or 1/2 of the whole floor of the National Museum of Anthropology, which I hope you could visit during your time in the Philippines, and those who live in the Philippines, of course, you should visit it anytime. And right beside that Hibla Textile Gallery is the Baybayin Gallery of Philippine Script, and within the same building is the Bangsamoro Gallery of beautiful heritage and crafts of our Muslim brothers and sisters, and the Gamaba Gallery of the Manlilikha ng Bayan awardees, who are like the national living treasures, the weavers and the craftsmen and the artisans from different regions in the country. So, as I mentioned to you, we started from a small room, and I hope that you could visit this Hibla Gallery, which I supported from a time it was a small room to what it is now, and growing. And we can see that it was actually Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos and Thailand and our ASEAN neighbors that inspired me to build our own. And when I supported that, then the National Museum, Dr. Barnes and Dr. Labrador were just so happy that there was a government official who appreciated the importance of textiles and the stories behind those textiles. And just to tell you a little story, as I told you, I spent my Christmas and New Year's vacation in Luang Prabang in Laos. You all know Luang Prabang is a UNESCO heritage site. I think we have a picture there, where I actually learned weaving. I could have studied weaving in Vigan or in my hometown, but maybe it's more difficult because everybody will be watching. But here, I was a complete unknown, and that's a video. I was studying weaving by the Mekong River in Okpoptok, a private sector initiative. I hope our own PTRI of the OST or even Philfida of DA could actually do something so simple, which Laos is doing. And so I realized how difficult it was. It took me all of 3.5 hours to complete one placemat. And that memorable experience of weaving, of fixing the cotton thread in the spool, and I even had the assistance of a Lao weaver. I don't know if I have the picture here of the textile which I have, which hangs now in my Senate office. Do we have that? That. And even the frame is just an old pallet for my son's solar panel business. And that is right before my door in my Senate office, just 2 minutes away from here. I wove every strand of that placemat. I would never use that placemat for the life of me. I would never dirty it. I would never give it as a gift to anyone. It took me 3.5 hours. I could never do it again. And so I realize now, for every piece of textile you beautifully wear, that I'm beautifully wearing, the painstaking, tedious process, the heart and soul is there, and I know it, because that's even very simple, and I had a difficult time. So for the Tibolis, let's say, of Lake Cebu, just allow me to give you little stories. For the Tibolis of Lake Cebu, all of these people have visited in my 30 years of helping our weaving communities. In South Cotabato, weaving, embroidery, beadwork, like what I'm wearing, and even belt making made of brass are important skills in keeping the Tiboli tradition alive, because every item they make is an important part of their life. Tinalak. I'm sure you all know what tinalak is. In fact, there, I can view a tinalak. Is that a textile at the back? That tinalak textile there in the wall, that is tinalak. It is made of abaca. It is usually used by the Tibolis during very important occasions like birth, marriage, death. And the belts with brass, small bells. I have a couple of those, and whenever I enter a session wearing my Tiboli belts, the majority leader, Senator Soto, would say she's announcing her arrival because I can hear the bells. So, but these bells are said to drive away bad spirits, while the embroidery they use to accentuate their traditional blouses narrate the story of their relationship with nature and the spirits. Now let's go up north in the Cordillera, in the mountain province. There, I also have that outfit, but that's not me. She looks better than me. She wears it very well. The mountain province, there's a municipality called Paracelis, and the indigenous group is called Gadang. The Gadang community practices weaving that involves an intricate beadwork. Gadang beadwork is beautiful, which makes their garments unique from many others. And the process of both the actual weaving and incorporating beadwork is just very tedious and takes a lot of time. A belt alone, it is said, is made in more than a week's time. I actually have a belt like that as well. As I told Dean Pernia, my dean from UP College of Mass Comm, I wear it every day. I proudly wear different indigenous troops outfits. Oh, there's my gadang. That was 16th Congress, a few Congresses ago. Hindi na po kasya ngayon. In some way. So Gadang elders strive to pass on this traditional Gadang cloth weaving to their children, to unleash the creativity of the youth while incorporating in them the values of hard work, patience, and the love of culture. Meanwhile, let's go to the Visayas. The Panay Bukidnon community in Kalinog in Iloilo. Again, I support them as well through the SLTs and the NCCA. I also have those blouses, and I've actually linked them with some Manila-based designers so that they can also have some employment. So they employ intricate handiwork and a unique dyeing system in the creation of their traditional wear. Embroiderers intricately work on their craft to emphasize the elaborate symbol of the Panay Bukidnon, which is usually inspired by their natural surroundings. Yeah. They seem different from the Tibolis because you see it's mostly flowers. And we can see that these indigenous peoples groups is really inspired by nature. We see flowers, sometimes when it looks contemporary, but there's still inspiration from what they see in the stars. And the Tibolis, of course, are called dream weavers. They don't have designs, and they actually literally dream about it. And this is quite different. It's also very interesting. Before I came here, I was deciding whether I would be a Tiboli today or a Panay Bukidnon, but I decided to wear this old Tiboli blouse. The Hanuno o Mangyan in Bulalakaw, in Oriental Mindoro, continues to practice burungan to produce thread from cotton. That was way back in 2012 when I brought Mangyans to the corridors of the Senate so that my colleagues in the Senate would also see those who don't go to the weaving communities. So I actually bring them everywhere, to the Senate, to the CITEM showcase every year, to the DTI National Trade Fair. For those who live here, in October, I think Director Leanyo would know the details, October 26 is the opening of the 5-day National Arts and Crafts Fair, where many of the products of indigenous people will be there. I believe the Bangyans will also be there. So the process of making cotton thread starts with the harvest of cotton. I actually funded 100 million for, if I'm not mistaken, Filfida, under the Department of Agriculture, so that we have more cotton farmers who are supported. I believe that's in Pinili, in Ilocos Norte, and in Sarangani, and in some parts of Antique, if I'm not mistaken. So just a warning to Filfida, by the time I read your budget, you should have spent your money by now so that we can give you more funds for next year. So you see, it's not just a matter of going to a bazaar or a trade fair or a pop-up or a store or seeing this beautiful showcase. The work I do is actually working with the farmers and working with the agencies of government, micromanaging Filfida, PTRI, the DOST, the DTI, all the trade fairs, and seeing the implementation of their work and the expenditure program also of the agencies of government, and seeing the importance of fiber, the importance of having cotton locally made available and not necessarily imported. So this whole process starts with the harvest of cotton, hopefully not imported, the removing of the seeds, which is already a very tedious process, and I know that because I have a cotton tree in my little farm in Tagaytay, and I harvested the cotton and did it manually with my caretaker, and I have three pillows from the kapok from my cotton tree. I just value those 3 pillows now because it came from my tree, and we had to take out the seeds manually in a very low-tech fashion. Using birikan, a bowl acting as a plinth, and the binuyo, a spool formed from the betel nut tree, cotton threads are spun as they're pulled away from the wool of wild cotton. The dye extracted from the tagum leaf is used to infuse color into the thread. I am not certain whether this tagum is the same as tayum, because from my understanding, this is the source of the indigo dye. The Hanunuo Mangyans weave ramit, which have various designs using backstrap looms. When you actually think about it, the word damit in Tagalog or Filipino is similar to the Mangyan's ramit, right? And these traditional practices are but a few of the many weaving traditions. I can go on and on because for as long as there are ethno-linguistic groups in our country, there are weaves, perhaps even more. And so around the country, we are able to share this through the programs of government. And I commend the Department of Trade through their CITEM fame. In 2012, I collaborated with CITEM fame, and we actually had a very contemporary booth. And I invited the Ivatans of Batanes, the Hanunuo Mangyans, the Tibolis from Lake Cebu in South Cotabato, the Gadangs from Mountain Province. There was I 10 pounds lighter. Okay. So I've always believed in convergence because the Philfida should not stand alone. The PTRI should not just work in isolation. The DTI should share its knowledge through its shared services facilities by giving equipment and looms. The NCCA actually also helps by giving cotton threads and hand looms and backstrap looms. And the Go Negosyo Centers of DTI can actually help these people market their products. And the Roving Academy of the Department of Trade and Industry can actually incorporate this in teaching others. The TESDA, we've collaborated. So the TESDA also has a skills training for the indigenous knowledge and skills of our indigenous people. So what am I trying to say? In every aspect of the bureaucracy and governance, there is a possibility for livelihood creation and culture preservation as long as we just talk to each other and collaborate on these projects. In the National Museum, for example, I initiated the continuing lecture series on Philippine traditional textiles and indigenous knowledge. I think that was, yes, in 2012 as well. So I bring both foreign lecturers and lecturers from the provinces. These are the Ifugaos that we brought there. I think I delivered the lecture, but there were also lecturers from the provinces who did that. And so that's another indigenous group. Forgets me now. What is the indigenous group of Davao Oriental? Who can help me? Yes. No, they're from Caraga in Mandaya. Those are the Mandaya, yes. So aside from showcasing the weaving traditions of the various ethno-linguistic groups in the country, we've also partnered with our ASEAN neighbors. So even long before our chairmanship of ASEAN, I looked forward to that, and we invited experts on textiles and women weavers from our ASEAN neighbors. And I hope that DTI, through Malu, and the NCCA, and all agencies can just continue what I'm doing, because I really cannot micromanage this and do it all the time. I just started it, and hopefully it can continue. And so we had a lecturer from Bangkok, and I don't know if you have the picture there, about their use of indigo in the Mekong area. Beautiful. The use of indigo. Thailand is quite advanced in the use of natural dye, and I know that the Philippines has a wealth of sources of natural dye. Only if the PTRI, I hope PTRI is here, can really do their work even better and work with the National Greening Program of the DENR and the Bureau of Plant Industry of the DA. If only they would plant the sources of natural dye and create natural dye community hubs or centers in those regions, in those provinces. Tayum plant for indigo. Mahogany trees, though they're not endemic, are also source. Every tree, every bark, every leaf actually is a source of natural dye. We also had Vietnamese lecturers on the Philippine textile collection in the Southeast Asian Museum. We also had, in January 2015, I think that's it, we had a lecture on Lao weaving from the Directorate General of the Lao National Museum, and a weaving demonstration by the master weaver. Her first name is just so long I cannot say it. Her family name is Kong Tong. I'll try to say her first name. It's Master Weaver Nanthavong Doang Si. I'm not sure, it's longer than that, but, and her family name is Kong Tong. She is an ASEAN Living Human Treasure awardee and a UNESCO awardee on traditional textile. Now, the challenge against the backdrop of a fast-changing, globalized world is how do we actually promote, how do we preserve, how do we sustain the many weaving methods rooted in our respective cultures? How do we support our talented weavers, our cultural bearers? Those are the Sama weavers all the way from Tawi-Tawi, not even from the capital town of Bongao. I think they came from Sibuto or Simunul. It was their first time in Manila when I brought them there in the National Museum, and they had beautiful mat weaves. And they said it was their first time to ride a plane. We transported them by boat from their island and brought them to the capital town, Bongao, and brought them to Zamboanga, then brought them to Manila, housed them near the National Museum, I think in Santa Isabel, and they had a few days of weaving demonstrations for those who patronize the National Museum. And the bonding is just so soulful and spiritual, and they were so grateful, and I'm so grateful for them because it's only once in a lifetime when you actually see these weavers, apart from the many times that I visited Tawi-Tawi in the past. But I don't think all of us present here really would have a chance to go to Tawi-Tawi in our lifetime. So we see that it is so important that we understand not just the beauty of what we wear, because I see many people go to bazaars and shops and boutiques and designers and pop-ups and trade fairs, which is great. Because when I started doing my work 30 years ago, people would wonder, why is she always wearing a pinya or a tiboli or a beadwork? But now I see many, many wearing it, and that's really great. But I think it's also important, in fact, more so important, that when someone wears something, he or she would know the provenance and the heritage and the heart and soul of the weaver who did it, and the importance of the natural environment to that weaver, and the implications of every beadwork and every stitch. And that's how we propagate our heritage and pass it on to the next generation. And so, what are the things that we in ASEAN have in common? I think it's very simple. We all use wooden looms, although machines are already being used, but we still have wooden looms. What are the kind of wood looms? I'm sure there are some here because I asked my staff to bring the Lumban weavers and to bring the Bule family from Ifugao. I don't know if they made it, they're here. So we will see them later. I can tour you. I'll be your tour guide after this. So we have the backstrap and the upright looms. Ayan, maikli ang buhok. sa Laos in 2008. Looms which we also share with our Western counterparts, even in America, in Europe, and even Scandinavian countries. So weavers also are typically located in their homes, in their villages, and in centers of weaving. I know in Oton and in Miagao, in Iloilo, we don't need to have weaving centers. They actually work in homes. During one of my visits in Oton, Iloilo, with the weavers whom I actually help and fund, they were weaving under a mango tree, and that's great. While taking care of their child, yung cradle, she was weaving in a mango tree, and her neighbors in Oton, which is actually a weaving municipality, were doing that. So we don't have to transpose them or move them away from their homes, but they can actually do it there. And we see the commonality. They all draw patterns and inspiration from nature, often in commune with the spiritual. And important, the use of natural fibers, silk, cotton, pineapple, abaca, banana, and the use of natural dye from every tree or plant possible. Even the ikat, or dyeing as a cross-border technique. Of recent note, we also share similar difficulties among ASEAN nations. While we have the commonalities, we have difficulties. With the diminished availability of our natural fibers, the prevalence of synthetic yarns, rayon and polyester have come into popular use. And it's different. The comfort of cotton and the natural fiber is just different from polyester. In the Philippines, and perhaps in some of your countries as well, recycled threads from waste. Yesterday, I received a gift from one of my staff. Her husband came from abroad and showed me a recycled rug from recycled materials. I should bring it to DTI and the OST so that we can actually use recycled material for that. Remind me to bring it on Monday. So, with the ease of use of synthetic dyes and dyed synthetic yarns, they've come into mainstream use. So I hope we could just continue, PTRI. I hope that you would, and Philfida, I hope that you would really be more proactive in encouraging communities to plant and to extract and to do natural dye. And fewer are practicing the tradition of weaving and natural dyeing, as the younger generation is not as engaged as the previous generations. So I am sure each one of the ASEAN member countries' cultural offices have been actively working to engage the ethnic communities towards the preservation and conservation of this intangible cultural heritage. In our case, I work closely with the National Commission on Culture and the Arts. In fact, I was just there yesterday, and we have launched not just Dayao festivals, which happens every year, but the Dayao television show. I hope that you brought copies. Can you distribute later the Dayao, especially for our foreign guests, which will also be translated now into the Dayao book, and soon roving Dayao for state universities and colleges and even offices to make it more accessible to our people. And we also actually fund the SLTs, or the Schools of Living Tradition, of local communities, so that these arts and crafts are actually perpetuated. So, in the regional effort, since 2005, the ASEAN Foundation has been organizing the ASEAN Traditional Textile Symposium. It is through these symposia that we hope we could come up with initiatives either through legislation, through innovative policies or programs to allow traditional textiles and weaving traditions to thrive in this day and age. So we see that textiles actually present a natural interconnection, a nexus where science, technology, and innovation meet arts, culture, and tradition. It is also a primary key to inclusivity, as it provides a bridge between agriculture and industry. As one of the three basics to life, in addition to food and shelter, textiles, more specifically in the form of clothes or vestments, must be sustained and promoted. And that's the reason why, as a young senator in 1998, I authored, even as early as then, the Tropical Fabrics Law, which is Republic Act 9242. So as early as then, and I was not mocked, but it was not easily understood. Some of my veteran senator colleagues then, as a young senator, they said, what is this young female senator talking about? Bakit naman mga tela ang kanyang linilegislate? But you see, as early as then, and it was finally enacted into law a few years later in my first term in 98, it was passed 2003, 2002, within my first term. And now they realize the importance of giving support to the agriculture sector and making them use banana, abaca, or natural fibers, so that this is actually mandatory. Did you know that? For government workers to wear natural fibers coming from our local farmers. So we actually envisioned this law almost 18 years ago to jumpstart the effort to build our country's tropical fabrics industry while giving the needed boost to the agriculture and industrial sectors and creating diversity in our textile and fashion industry. These goals make the law relevant to our farmers, our weavers, our designers, our manufacturers, and even our consumers. But I know that there are parallel efforts in the executive, and that's the Philippine Council for Industry, Energy, and Emerging Technology Research under the DOST. We have, as I mentioned, the PTRI and their Innovation Center for Yarns and Textiles. We have the Regional Handloom Weaving Innovation Centers, etc. But I believe there's still room for improvement in terms of convergence. And that's what I always say when I conduct my hearing as chairman of the Committee on Finance. I really would like to see greater convergence of all agencies where there is a livelihood component, where there is a textile component, where there is a natural fiber component, so that all of us could actually say that we used every centavo in our national budget to converge to bring livelihood for our people. So all of this is actually a preservation of our heritage. And this is a shared cause among all of us. The reason why you are here today, despite your busy schedules, and why I'm here today, is because it is our cause. As individuals with influence in our respective nations, the task before us is to help our people value and continue our traditions. We must promote, continue to promote, our cultural enterprises and our creative industries of our indigenous people. We must open the doors of opportunities for learning and knowledge sharing so that we expand our weaving communities and our local textile industries. Weaving and traditional textiles are part of a rich cultural heritage that each of our nations possess. And this heritage weaves a nation's people into one unbreakable fabric. As we have commenced the ASEAN economic integration, we must not get lost while we welcome each other into one community. That is in Ifugao. That's, I think, a death shroud. Our respective identities as sovereign nations must remain intact. It is in a stronger and strengthened individual country's identity that regional integration is enriched. So with that, I thank you for listening intently, and would love to go around with you and see what DTI has prepared for all of us. Thank you.